Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
I've got a great story for you out of Michigan, my home state. And a lot of people sent this to me, so thank you very much. Michigan boy used Slingshot to save his sister from being abducted, according to the local police up there near Alpena, Michigan. Alpena is up over here-ish on the lower peninsula of Michigan. And yes, we use our hand to demonstrate that. A quick-thinking boy who saw a would-be kidnapper trying to abduct his 8-year-old sister fought off her assailant with a slingshot, according to police. Chloe Meyer wrote this for Newsweek. The event happened at an undisclosed location in Alpena Township in northern Michigan. The girl was hunting for mushrooms in her backyard when a stranger stepped out of the woods and tried to drag her back into the forest. He covered her mouth as she struggled, but her 13-year-old brother saw what was happening from his bedroom window and began shooting at her attacker with his weapon. According to the Michigan State Police, they're referring to a slingshot. The incident happened on Wednesday, was not made public until Friday. And in case you're curious, since 2010, an average of 350 people under the age of 21 are abducted by strangers each year. In this case, the teen's swift action and sharp shooting saved his sister as the attacker fled the scene. But it has an even better ending. You see, the suspect was hit in the head and chest with projectiles that caused him to let go of the girl, according to Lieutenant Commander of the local post of the Michigan State Troopers. The girl was able to struggle and get away, and he shot another one at the man that hit the suspect in the chest, and then he fled the scene. But that last shot there becomes very, very important because it helped the police figure out who the guy was. The siblings' family raised the alarm, and troopers found the suspect, who was a 17-year-old, hiding at a nearby gas station. So what the brother did helped us to identify the suspect because he had injuries from getting hit with a slingshot. So the police find the guy who matches the description, and better yet, he's got marks on his body as if he'd been hit by things shot from a slingshot. The little girl and her family have been left incredibly shaken by the incident. The lieutenant gave some tough advice to kids who should ever find themselves in a similar situation. Fight, do everything you can, bite their hand, stomp their feet, kick them in the shin, do whatever you can to fight, and if your mouth is free, scream as loud as you possibly can. Now, here, they said that the abductor did get his hand over her mouth so she couldn't scream. And the girl's uncle, who has not been named, by the way, although I guess they know who he is and so on, but the news is not naming these people because of the ages of some of the people in the story, said, "Hey, everyone, earlier today, my niece was almost kidnapped out of her own yard here in Alpena. A young 17-year-old with a black mohawk grabbed my niece, tried kidnapping her. My nephew heard her screaming and saw through his window and shot the guy with a slingshot. The guy let go. Cops were called, found out that they've got the guy in custody. Our kids are too precious to let somebody try to take them. When your kids are outside playing, we really need to pay attention to what they're doing and who's around. I'm proud of my nephew, and I know my niece is traumatized. I'm sending prayers for her. They had to be extremely scary for her," referring to what happened. And, of course, that was a Facebook post. So further details have not been released due to the suspect's age, but police say he confessed that he planned to beat the child. He was charged. I'm just laughing because it's such a strange thing to admit to. Police say he confessed that he planned to beat the child. He was charged as an adult on Thursday with attempted kidnapping, attempted assault to do great bodily harm, less than murder, and a count of assault and battery, and booked into jail, and they want a $150,000 bond. Newsweek reached out by email on Saturday to the Michigan State Police for further information and comment, but apparently they did not get a comment at that time. And then Newsweek's got a bunch of information in here about other kidnapping statistics around the nation and how often it's a stranger versus how often it's somebody known by the child and that kind of thing, which I'm not going to really get into because I'm not sure how relevant that is to this story. But here, it's the boy who sees his sister being grabbed. He's 13 years old, and his sister's 8. And number one, he's a good enough shot to where he hits the guy twice. But I know some people are going to say, Steve, I wonder, though, whether he was risking harming his sister in the process, because sometimes it can be difficult to be that accurate with a slingshot. And we don't know, but we do know this ended well. So I'm not going to get here and criticize that, because for all we know, if the attempted kidnapper had his back to where the little boy was, it might be the little boy thought, hey, I can shoot away all I want. I can't hit my sister from this angle. That's a possibility. So let's just say that's a possibility, okay? I can tell you when I was a little kid, though, my brothers and I had BB guns and slingshots. And there was also a thing called a wrist rocket. A wrist rocket. And I haven't seen one in a while, but a wrist rocket is a type of slingshot they made back in the day. And I'm sure they still make them. But I mean, I remember when they came out, it was considered like a super slingshot. And it simply had this handle with the forks for the slingshot part. But the handle came down and went around in such a way that it wrapped around your wrist. And you could take this thing and yank it back real far. It would shoot projectiles very, very hard and very, very far. And so I remember playing with one of those quite a bit. And so I've mentioned before that when I was growing up, my grandparents all lived in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. And so I'd spend a part of my summer every year in the woods near a little town called Alston. Spent time fishing for trout on the little creek. And of course, tramping around out in the woods with either a slingshot or a BB gun. And just it's primarily like target practice type stuff, you know. So we go out someplace by the old foundations and, you know, line up pop cans across top of the wall and pick them off with what we're shooting, which are maybe a slingshot or a wrist rocket, or it might be a BB gun. And then that's something that, you know, we did quite a bit of just for entertainment out there. Never had the opportunity to use a slingshot to save somebody's life. But we also don't know for a fact that this girl's life was in danger, in the sense that, you know, we don't know that there's an attempted murder going on here. But we do know that they say that the kid, when asked what he was going to do, apparently said he planned to severely beat the child. And we have no idea what would prompt a 17-year-old to want to beat an 8-year-old girl. But the scary part, of course, is that Alpena, depending on where they are in town, it's up north in Michigan. And Michigan's got a lot of forests and woods and stuff. And so you usually think you can walk around out there fairly safely because the bears that are out there tend to keep away from people. And beyond that, there's not a whole lot out there that's going to hurt you unless it's people. And you got to be scared of people apparently now. So I understand. You got to be scared of people everywhere. But the scary part is this looks like she was basically in her own backyard, and the backyard backs up against the woods. So there's not much more to the story beyond that. I bet we hear more in the coming days, because this is the kind of story that once it hits the headlines, people want to know more, especially because they want to figure out the deal behind this 13-year-old boy sharpshooting with a slingshot. And there was a story out of Michigan about a week ago. And I didn't do a story on it because it's such a short story in the sense of what happened, but there was a school bus driver who wasn't feeling well. And nowadays they've got cameras on the buses, so we can see the entire story. We know what happened. And this school bus driver radioed in, I believe the town's Warren, where it happened, Warren, Michigan, which is a little bit farther south than Alpena. And the bus driver radioed in and said, "I'm not feeling well. I may have to pull over." And then about 10 or 15 seconds later, reached for the shifter, and then, boom, unconscious. And a little boy who I think is like 10 years old stepped up and just reached over and stomped on the brake and turned around and said, "Someone call 911." And off camera, somebody apparently said something to the effect of, "Well, we're not supposed to use our phones on the bus." And he's, "I don't care, call 911. And of course, by stepping on the brake and then eventually putting the bus into park, he'd kept the bus from running into something or running off the road. And it's hard to say what would have happened if he hadn't done that. But the point is that he was quick thinking, and he very, just stepped in and did what he needed to do. And the fact that he recognized what happened as quickly as he did, took charge, and then especially when somebody gave him pushback on calling 911, no, I don't care, call 911. And so that made national news also. And the funny part is that family and that kid are both not terrible attention seekers. They're just kind of quiet people. So I've seen a couple different interviews with them, and they're just kind of like, well, he did what he had to do. And the kid's like, yeah, And so they gave him the key to the city last week. And even at that ceremony, he's kind of like, okay, thanks. He's not jumping around like, I'm a hero. So that's another Michigan boy, but didn't do that one because, like I said, the story there is so short. But here we've got more details. And I like the fact that they point out that the kid shooting the slingshot helped identify the perpetrator because he had marks on his body indicating he'd been shot with something. So there you go. Chloe Meyer wrote that for Newsweek. Michigan boy used a slingshot to save his sister from being abducted. And that's according to the Michigan State Police. Questions or comments, put them below. Let's talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law. A truly happy person is one who can enjoy the scenery while on a detour.